The crystal glasses clinked as my father raised his champagne for yet another toast celebrating my younger brother Michael's promotion. The elegant dining room of our family home buzzed with excitement as relatives gathered around, hanging on his every word about becoming the youngest VP in his company's history. I sat quietly at the far end of the table, pushing my food around my plate. At 32, I was the family disappointment, the one who had wasted my business degree by starting my own consulting firm instead of joining the prestigious family company Thompson Industries. To Michael, my father's voice boomed, following in my footsteps, taking Thompson Industries to new heights. This is what real success looks like. The pointed comment wasn't so. I caught my mother's sideways glance, filled with that familiar mix of pity and disappointment. 10 years ago, when I announced I was striking out on my own, she'd have cried for days, lamenting how I was throwing away my future. Speaking of success, my Aunt Margaret chimed in, wine glass swaying dangerously in her hand. Olivia dear, are you still doing that? What do you call it? Freelance thing. I straightened my shoulders, maintaining my composure. Yes, I run my own consulting firm. We specialize in corporate restructuring and financial strategy. A dismissive laugh cut through the air. Consulting, my father scoffed. A fancy word for being unemployed. Tell me, how many clients do you actually have? Before I could respond, Michael jumped in with his trademark smirk. Come on, Dad, be nice. I'm sure Olivia helps lots of small businesses with their bookkeeping or whatever. The table erupted in poorly concealed laughter. I gripped my fork tighter, thinking of the contracts sitting on my desk. The international clients whose names would make everyone at this table gasp. But they didn't deserve to know about WR Consulting Group, the company I had built from nothing into one of the most selective firms in the industry. You know, my father continued, swirling his expensive bourbon, Thompson Industries is always looking for entry-level positions. Even at your age, we might find something suitable. That was it, the final straw. 10 years of condescension, of being treated like a failure because I chose my own path, crashed over me in a wave of cold clarity. I placed my napkin on the table and stood up. Thank you for dinner, I said calmly, and congratulations, Michael. I hope your promotion brings you everything you deserve. My mother's face fell. Olivia, don't be dramatic. Your father is trying to help. No, I replied, my voice steady. He's trying to control me, just like always. But here's what none of you understand. I don't need your help. I never did. My father's face darkened with anger. Sit down, Olivia. This behavior just proves how worthless your so-called independence has made you. You're nothing without this family. The dining room fell silent. I looked at each face around the table, the relatives who had dismissed me, the brother who had overshadowed me, the parents who had never believed in me. In that moment, I felt nothing but pity for them. Worthless, I repeated softly. We'll see about that. I walked out without another word, ignoring my mother's calls to come back. As I drove home to my penthouse apartment, the one my family knew nothing about, I couldn't help but smile. Because what none of them realized was that in exactly 2 weeks, Thompson Industries would be facing its biggest crisis in 40 years. And I was the only one who could save them. Back in my office the next morning, I reviewed the confidential files my team had compiled. Thompson Industries was in serious trouble, though they were desperately trying to hide it. A series of failed international expansions had left them hemorrhaging money. Their stock was quietly plummeting, and their biggest client, Jensen Global, was threatening to pull their $100 million contract. My father's arrogance had blinded him to the corruption in his upper management. His precious golden child Michael was too inexperienced to see the warning signs. Within months, the company would collapse unless someone stepped in with a miracle solution. That miracle had a name: Project Phoenix, a complete restructuring strategy that my firm had spent 6 months developing. We had already positioned ourselves as the only viable solution, working through shell companies and subsidiaries to ensure the Thompson family never saw my name. Tomorrow, Thompson Industries would receive the contract that could save them. The only catch: they'd have to agree to give complete control to the mysterious CEO of WR Consulting Group. I picked up my phone and dialed my assistant. Sarah, is everything ready for tomorrow's meeting? Yes, Ms. Walker. The contracts are prepared, and the Thompson Industries board has confirmed their attendance. They're desperate to meet the CEO who might save their company. I smiled, thinking of my father's words from dinner. Worthless. Nothing without the family. Perfect, I replied. Make sure the photographer is ready. I want to capture their faces when they realize exactly who they'll be begging for help. The next 2 weeks would change everything. My family thought they were attending a standard board meeting to discuss the company's future. Instead, they were walking into the carefully laid trap I had spent years preparing. Sometimes the best revenge isn't served cold. It's served with a legally binding contract and an ironclad signature line that reads, Olivia Walker, CEO of Abdullah Consulting Group. They were about to learn that the daughter they dismissed had become the most powerful person in their world, and I was going to savor every moment of their realization. The morning of the board meeting dawned bright and clear. I stood in my private office on the top floor of the OBR building, adjusting my tailored suit and watching the city come alive below. In 2 hours, my family would walk through those doors, not knowing they were entering my domain. Ms. Walker? Sarah appeared in the doorway. Your father and brother have arrived early. They're waiting in the main conference room. I checked my reflection one last time. Gone was the quiet, dismissed daughter from the family dinner. Today I was Olivia Walker, CEO of Abdullah Consulting Group, ranked among the top 50 most influential businesswomen in America. How do they seem? I asked, gathering my files. Nervous. Your father's been pacing, and Michael keeps adjusting his tie. They have no idea who's about to walk in. I smiled. Let them wait. Has Jensen Global confirmed? Yes. Their CEO is on standby for the video call. He's quite eager to see how this plays out. Perfect. Jensen Global's $100 million contract wasn't just at stake. They were prepared to triple their investment if Thompson Industries accepted our terms. Terms that would give me controlling interest in my family's company. I took the private elevator to the conference floor, my heels clicking against marble as I approached the double doors. Through the frosted glass, I could see the silhouettes of the Thompson Industries board members. Time to make an entrance. The room fell silent as I walked in. My father stopped mid-sentence, his face draining of color. Michael's mouth hung open, his new VP pin glinting uselessly on his lapel. The other board members looked confused, glancing between me and my family. Good morning, gentlemen, I said calmly, taking my place at the head of the table. I'm Olivia Walker, CEO of Abdullah Consulting Group. Shall we begin? This is impossible, my father sputtered, his usual authority crumbling. You run a small consulting business. I raised an eyebrow. Do I? Sarah, please pull up our company portfolio. The screens around the room lit up with Abdullah's global presence, our offices in 15 countries, our client list of Fortune 500 companies, our successful restructuring of major corporations. The board members leaned forward, clearly impressed. My father's face grew increasingly pale. As you're all aware, I continue professionally, Thompson Industries is facing a crisis. Your international expansion has failed, resulting in losses of over $200 million. Your stock has dropped 40% in 6 months, and Jensen Global is prepared to pull their contract unless drastic changes are made. Michael jumped up. How do you know all this? This is confidential information. Because, dear brother, we've been watching your company's decline for months. In fact, we've been carefully positioning ourselves as your only viable solution. I nodded to Sarah, who distributed thick folders to everyone present. Inside you'll find our complete analysis of Thompson Industries' situation, along with our proposed restructuring strategy. We call it Project Phoenix. The board members flipped through the documents with growing excitement. Even my father couldn't hide his interest as he read the detailed plan that would save his company. This is brilliant, one board member muttered. The international repositioning, the debt restructuring, the new technology integration, it's exactly what we need. Of course it is, I replied. We've spent 6 months developing it. But our help comes with conditions. My father's eyes snapped up to meet mine. He knew what was coming, he just didn't want to believe it. Abdullah Consulting Group will take a controlling interest in Thompson Industries. We'll restructure the board, implement new management protocols, and oversee all major decisions for the next 5 years. The room erupted in chaos. Board members argued among themselves. Michael looked like he might faint, and my father's face turned an alarming shade of red. You can't do this, he growled. This is my company. I built it from nothing. I leaned forward, my voice steady, and now you're watching it crumble. Your choice is simple. Accept our help and save the company, or refuse and watch it collapse within months. As if on cue, the main screen lit up with an incoming video call. Ah, perfect timing. Gentlemen, please welcome Edward Jensen, CEO of Jensen Global. The distinguished face of Edward Jensen appeared on screen. James, he addressed my father, I trust you've reviewed Abdilar's proposal. Ms. Walker's firm has my complete confidence. In fact, if you accept their terms, we're prepared to triple our current contract. My father's jaw clenched. He was trapped, and he knew it. The board members were already nodding eagerly. Triple the Jensen contract would save hundreds of jobs and restore investor confidence. We'll need your answer now, I said, sliding the contract across the table. Time is running out, and we have other potential clients waiting. The room grew quiet as my father stared at the contract. His hand shook slightly as he picked up the pen. 10 years of dismissing me, of calling me worthless, of treating me like a failure. All of it had led to this moment. Sign it, Dad, Michael whispered urgently. We don't have a choice. My father's signature was barely legible, but it was legally binding. As soon as the contract was signed, Sarah began distributing press releases announcing OWR's acquisition of controlling interest in Thompson Industries. Excellent. I stood up, gathering my files. The transition team will arrive tomorrow. Michael, you'll be reassigned to our West Coast office, entry-level position, of course. We need someone to handle the bookkeeping. My brother's face turned crimson as his own words from the family dinner were thrown back at him. And Dad? I paused at the door, savoring the moment. I believe this makes me your boss. Don't worry, I'm sure we can find something suitable for someone of your experience. The look of shock on his face was worth every moment of the past 10 years. As I walked out, I heard one board member whisper, "Did you know his daughter was Olivia Walker?" I smiled, remembering my father's words from 2 weeks ago. Worthless, nothing without the family. How wrong he had been. Back in my office, I poured myself a glass of champagne and gazed out at the city skyline. My phone buzzed, a message from my mother. Olivia, please, your father is devastated. This isn't how families should treat each other. I laughed softly, typing my response. You're right, Mom. Families shouldn't call each other worthless. Families shouldn't dismiss each other's dreams. Families shouldn't need a contract to show respect. But here we are. I turned off my phone and raised my glass to my reflection. The quiet daughter they had dismissed had become the most powerful person in their world. And this was just the beginning. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's becoming so successful, but they have to face how wrong they were all by themselves. Tomorrow would be my first official day as the controlling shareholder of Thompson Industries. I had 10 years of changes planned, starting with the company name. After all, Abdilar Industries had a much better ring to it. The worthless daughter had built an empire. And now, they would all work for me. The laboratory was quiet except for the gentle hum of equipment and my fingers tapping on the keyboard. It was nearly midnight, but I couldn't stop, not when I was this close. My name is Dr. Elena Martinez, and after 3 years of research, countless failed attempts, and endless nights like this one, I was finally seeing results that could change everything. Still here? I jumped at the sound of my husband's voice. David stood in the doorway of our home lab, wearing his usual expensive suit, perfectly styled hair barely touched by the long day at the hospital where he worked as a surgeon. He looked more like he was headed to a photo shoot than coming home from a 12-hour shift. Just finishing up, I said, quickly saving my latest data. The results from today's trials are promising. I think we're close to a breakthrough with the... Elena, he cut me off, his tone carrying that familiar edge of condescension. It's late. Come to bed. Whatever you're working on can wait. I bit back my frustration. David had never understood my research, never saw value in the countless hours I spent developing new treatment protocols for autoimmune diseases. To him, real medicine happened in operating rooms, not research labs. The fact that I'd chosen to focus on research instead of clinical practice was just another way I'd disappointed him. 5 more minutes, I promised, turning back to my computer. I just need to document these findings. He sighed dramatically but left me alone. I waited until his footsteps faded before opening my email to send the day's results to myself. A habit I developed after one too many computer crashes had taught me the importance of backups. That's when I saw it. An email from the National Institute of Health, marked urgent. My hands trembled as I opened it. Dear Dr. Martinez, We are pleased to inform you that your research proposal on novel treatments for autoimmune disorders has been selected for full funding consideration. The preliminary results you've shared are extremely promising. I had to read it 3 times before the words sank in. This was it, the validation I've been working towards for years. The NIH grant would mean everything: proper funding, a real lab, the chance to expand my research beyond our converted garage. I wanted to run upstairs and tell David immediately, but something held me back. The last time I'd shared exciting news about my research, he'd dismissed it with a wave of his hand. "That's nice, dear," he'd said, not even looking up from his phone. "But let's talk about real medicine. You should see the surgery I performed today." Instead, I forwarded the email to my personal account and headed upstairs. I'd tell him tomorrow, I decided. Maybe over breakfast, when he was in a better mood. But the next morning, the email was gone. Not just from my work computer, but from my personal email too. Deleted from both accounts with no trace in the trash folders. I frowned at my screen, puzzled. Had I imagined it? The lack of sleep must be getting to me. I made a mental note to check my NIH application status later and headed to the kitchen. David was already there, looking fresh and polished as always. He barely glanced up from his phone as I entered. "I'm thinking of presenting at the medical conference next month," he said casually. "I've been working on something interesting." "Oh?" I poured myself a cup of coffee, trying to shake off my unease about the missing email. "What kind of presentation?" "Just some research findings," he replied vaguely. "Nothing you'd understand. Real medical breakthroughs, not just theoretical stuff." I felt my jaw tighten but forced a smile. "That's great, honey. I'm sure it'll be amazing." He finally looked up, his expression softening slightly. "You know, Elena, if you're bored playing around in that garage, I could probably get you a position at the hospital. Something simple, administrative maybe. At least then you'd be doing something useful." The words hit like a slap. "I'm not playing," I said quietly. "My research is important." "Sure it is," he said, his tone making it clear he thought the opposite. He stood up, straightening his tie. "I'll be late tonight. Don't wait up." As soon as he left, I went back to my computer, determined to track down that NIH email. But the more I searched, the more things I noticed were wrong. Files moved or missing. Data sets altered. Small changes that wouldn't be obvious unless you knew what to look for. My heart started racing as I dug deeper. Someone had been in my computer, systematically copying my research and deleting the originals. And there was only one other person who had access to my lab. With shaking hands, I opened a browser and searched for the upcoming medical conference David had mentioned. There it was, listed among the keynote presentations. Breakthrough Treatments in Autoimmune Disorders, presented by Dr. David Martinez. The room spun as I stared at the screen. My research, my life's work. He was going to present it as his own. I sat there for a long time, letting the betrayal wash over me. Years of dismissive comments, subtle put-downs, and barely concealed contempt suddenly shifted into sharp focus. He hadn't just been belittling my work. He'd been studying it, waiting for the right moment to steal it. Finally, I stood up, my decision made. I wouldn't confront him, not yet. Instead, I walked calmly to our bedroom and opened his laptop, the one he thought I didn't know the password to. Sure enough, there were all my files, carefully organized and relabeled with his name. I smiled as I started typing. David had no idea what he just set in motion. You see, my husband thought he knew everything about me, but there was a lot he didn't know. Like the fact that before I met him, I'd worked in digital forensics, or that I'd maintained backdoor access to every computer in our house, just in case, or that I had copies of all my research stored securely off-site, with timestamps and digital signatures proving exactly when each discovery was made. But most importantly, he didn't know that I'd been waiting for something like this. A chance to finally show him exactly who he'd been underestimating all these years. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in a long time. "Sarah, it's Elena. Remember that favor you owe me? I need your help with something." The next few weeks passed in a blur of careful preparation. On the surface, nothing changed. I went about my routine as usual, working in my lab, making small talk with David when our paths crossed. If he noticed anything different about my behavior, he didn't show it. But beneath the calm exterior, I was building my case. Sarah, now a prominent intellectual property lawyer, helped me document everything. Every stolen file, every deleted email, every trace of David's systematic theft of my research. This is incredible, Sarah said one afternoon as we met in a cafe far from my usual haunts. He really thought he could just take all this and no one would notice? I stirred my coffee, watching the liquid swirl. He thought I was useless, remember? Just his silly wife playing scientist in the garage. Sarah's expression hardened. Well, he's about to learn exactly how wrong he was. The medical conference was approaching fast. David spent more and more time at the hospital, preparing his presentation. Each time he mentioned it, I had to fight back a smile. Then, 3 days before the conference, I received another email from the NIH. This time, I made sure David couldn't delete it. Dear Dr. Martinez, we are writing to follow up on our previous communication regarding your research funding. We are deeply concerned about the apparent duplication of your work being presented at the upcoming medical conference. I forwarded the email to Sarah, then sat back and waited. The next morning, David's phone started ringing at 6 a.m. I pretended to sleep as he answered it, listening to his voice grow increasingly panicked. What do you mean, intellectual property dispute? No, you don't understand. This is my research. What previous submission? I kept my eyes closed as he got dressed in a rush and hurried out the door. Only then did I allow myself a small smile. Phase 1 was complete. The day of the medical conference arrived with a buzz of anticipation. I watched from our bedroom window as David left early that morning, his presentation materials clutched tightly under his arm. He hadn't slept well. I'd heard him pacing most of the night, making frantic phone calls in hushed tones. He still had no idea I was coming to the conference. I waited until his car disappeared around the corner before getting ready. The red dress I'd chosen was a far cry from my usual lab attire, fitted, professional, and powerful. As I applied the finishing touches to my makeup, I thought about how long I'd been planning this moment. Everything's in place, Sarah texted. Are you ready? I took one last look in the mirror, on my way. The conference center was packed when I arrived, doctors and researchers from around the country filling the massive auditorium. David's presentation was scheduled as the keynote, a spot he'd no doubt pulled strings to secure. I slipped into a seat near the back, my heart pounding but my expression calm. The conference director took the stage, shuffling some papers nervously. Ladies and gentlemen, there's been a slight change to our program. I watched David's face as he sat in the front row, his back rigid with tension. He knew something was wrong, but he had no idea what was coming. Instead of our scheduled keynote, the director continued, we have a special presentation from the original researcher behind today's breakthrough findings. Please welcome Dr. Elena Martinez. The room erupted in murmurs as I stood up. David whirled around, his face draining of color as he saw me walking toward the stage. For the first time in our marriage, he looked genuinely afraid. I took my place at the podium, setting down the folder containing copies of every piece of evidence Sarah and I had gathered. Thank you, I said into the microphone, my voice steady and clear. Today, I'd like to talk about not just medical breakthroughs, but about integrity in research. What happened next would make headlines in the medical community for months to come. I presented my research, my real research backed by years of documented work. I showed the progression of my discoveries, the careful trials, the meticulous documentation. And then, without ever mentioning David by name, I demonstrated how my work had been stolen, altered, and nearly presented as someone else's. The evidence was irrefutable. With each slide, each data point, each time-stamped file, I watched David sink lower in his seat. The whispers in the audience grew louder. Several people were openly staring at him now, recognition dawning on their faces. Furthermore, I continued, maintaining my professional tone. I'm pleased to announce that this research has already been submitted to and recognized by the National Institutes of Health. The full study, under my name, will be published next month in the Journal of Medical Innovation. I saw David stand abruptly and head for the exit, but security, arranged by Sarah, was already there. He wasn't going anywhere until the Board of Ethics had their say. After my presentation, the conference erupted in chaos. Reporters who'd come to cover a simple medical breakthrough found themselves with a much bigger story. Colleagues crowded around me, some offering support, others asking questions about my research itself. Through it all, I maintained my composure, answering questions with the same quiet confidence that David had dismissed for so long. Later that evening, as security escorted David out of the building, he caught my eye. "Why?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "You could have just confronted me privately. Why do this?" I stepped closer, keeping my voice low so only he could hear. "Because you needed to learn something, David. You thought I was useless, remember? Just your silly wife playing scientist. Well, now everyone knows exactly who I am, and exactly who you are." The aftermath was swift and severe. David's medical license was suspended pending investigation. The hospital launched an internal review of all his past work. Our marriage, unsurprisingly, ended in divorce. But for me, it was just the beginning. The NIH funding came through, allowing me to establish a proper research facility. My work gained recognition in the medical community, leading to collaborations with other researchers who actually respected my contributions. 1 year later, I stood in my new lab, not a converted garage, but a state-of-the-art facility with a team of dedicated researchers. My phone buzzed with a news alert. David had been formally stripped of his medical license, his reputation in tatters. I set the phone down without reading further. His story didn't matter anymore. What mattered was the work we were doing here, the lives we could change with our research. A young intern approached my desk, looking nervous. "Dr. Martinez, I wanted to ask you about your latest protocol." I smiled, remembering how it felt to be dismissed and belittled. "Pull up a chair," I said warmly. "Let's talk it through." As we discussed the research, I thought about how far I'd come. David had tried to steal my life's work, thinking I would stay quiet, stay in my place. Instead, he'd given me the push I needed to reclaim not just my research, but my power. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about rising so far above someone that they have to live with the knowledge of what they lost. David hadn't just lost his career and reputation. He'd lost the chance to be part of something truly groundbreaking, all because he couldn't see past his own arrogance. The lab hummed with activity around me, researchers collaborating, ideas flowing freely. This was what I'd always dreamed of, not just making breakthroughs, but creating an environment where everyone's contributions were valued. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Sarah. "Saw the news. Drinks to celebrate." I texted back quickly, "Can't tonight. We're on the verge of something big here." And we were. The preliminary results from our latest trials were showing promise in treating previously resistant autoimmune conditions. The work I'd started alone in my garage was now helping people, saving lives. That evening, as I walked through the lab preparing to head home, I passed the wall where we displayed our team's achievements. In the center was the framed cover of the Journal of Medical Innovation featuring my original research, the same research David had tried to claim as his own. Next to it hung a new addition. A letter from a patient whose life had been transformed by our treatment protocol. "Thank you for not giving up," it read. "Thank you for believing in your work." I touched the frame gently, remembering all the times David had called my work useless, all the times he tried to make me doubt myself. If he hadn't tried to steal my research, would I have found the strength to step out of his shadow? Would I have built all this? Sometimes the worst betrayals lead us to our greatest triumphs. David had tried to steal my work, but in doing so, he'd given me something far more valuable. The push I needed to become who I was always meant to be. As I turned off the lights and headed out, my phone lit up with another message. This one was from a name I hadn't seen in months. "David. I'm sorry," it read. "I know it's too late, but I need you to know, you were never useless. I was just too blind to see how extraordinary you are." I deleted the message without responding. He was right about one thing. It was too late. I didn't need his recognition anymore. I had something far better. The knowledge that I had built something meaningful, something that would outlast his betrayal and help countless people. The night air was cool as I walked to my car. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new discoveries, new opportunities to prove that success is the best revenge. But tonight, I could rest easy knowing that I had turned his betrayal into my triumph. In the end, David's attempt to steal my work hadn't destroyed me. It had set me free, and that was worth more than any revenge I could have planned. The lab was quiet at 2 a.m., just the way I liked it. I was adjusting the microscope settings when my phone buzzed for the 5th time. Michael again. I glanced at his message. "Either come home now or don't come home at all." I stared at the screen, then at the cell cultures I'd been monitoring for 16 hours straight. We were close to a breakthrough. I could feel it. Something in the way the cancer cells were responding to our new compound. Dr. Harrison. My research assistant Amy's voice broke through my thoughts. The latest results are in. You need to see this. My name is Elizabeth Harrison, and at 34, I was about to make a choice that would change everything. I just didn't know it yet. Show me, I said, ignoring my phone as it buzzed again. Amy pulled up the data on our computer. The graphs told a story that made my heart race. Our modified protein was targeting the cancer cells with unprecedented precision, leaving healthy cells untouched. If these results held up. The lab door slammed open. Michael stood there in his expensive suit, face flushed with anger. Really, Liz, again? It's our anniversary. I straightened up from the microscope, suddenly remembering the dinner reservation he'd mentioned this morning. Michael, I'm sorry, but you need to see this. We've had a breakthrough. I don't care about your breakthrough. He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair. I care about having a wife who actually comes home, who shows up to dinner with my colleagues, who acts like a normal person instead of this. He gestured at my loud coat, my messy ponytail, the papers scattered across my desk. This is who I am, I said quietly. You knew that when you married me. My research. Your research is more important than everything else, isn't it? His voice was bitter. More important than me, than having a family, than living a normal life. Do you know what it's like, being married to someone who cares more about cells in a petri dish than their own husband? Amy shifted uncomfortably behind me. Dr. Harrison, I can finish up here if you need to. No, Michael cut in. Don't bother. I'm done. He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket and tossed it onto my desk. Divorce papers. Jessica already helped me file them. Jessica. His secretary. The one who'd been bringing him coffee and batting her eyelashes for the past year. How long? I asked, though I already knew the answer. He had the grace to look slightly ashamed. 6 months. She's pregnant. The words hit like a physical blow. We talked about having children, but I wanted to wait until my research was further along. Michael had seemed to understand, or at least I thought he had. Jessica wants a real family, he continued. She's ready to be a real wife, not just a researcher who happens to be married. I picked up the envelope, my hands steady despite the trembling in my chest. Get out. Liz. Get out? After he left, Amy touched my shoulder gently. Dr. Harrison. I shrugged off her hand and turned back to the microscope. The results, Amy. Show me the rest of the results. That night set the pattern for the next year. I threw myself into the research, spending every waking hour in the lab. Our preliminary results attracted attention from major pharmaceutical companies, but I turned down their offers. This was my work, my vision. I wasn't going to let corporate interests water it down. The divorce was finalized quickly. Michael married Jessica 3 months later, posting happy family photos on social media. Him, her, their new baby. I didn't look at them. I had more important things to focus on. Our breakthrough came on a Tuesday morning, exactly 1 year after Michael had walked out. The modified protein wasn't just targeting cancer cells. It was destroying them completely, with minimal side effects. The implications were staggering. I called Dr. Chen, my mentor and head of the research department. Elizabeth, he said after reviewing our data, this is extraordinary. Have you considered what this could mean? Of course, I replied, still staring at the results. If we can scale this up, develop it into a viable treatment, it could save millions of lives. He leaned back in his chair. But you'll need funding. Serious funding. I nodded. I know, but I want to maintain control. No corporate buyouts, no compromising the research for quick profits. He smiled. I may know some people. Investors who understand the value of pure research. Let me make some calls. The next few months were a whirlwind. We secured private funding from a group of investors who believed in our vision. I assembled a larger team, moved to a bigger lab, started the long process of clinical trials. The preliminary results were beyond our wildest expectations. Patients who had exhausted all other options were showing remarkable improvement. Word spread through the medical community. And suddenly everyone wanted to know about the brilliant Dr. Harrison and her revolutionary cancer treatment. I was reviewing the latest trial data when my phone buzzed with a text from Amy. Have you seen this? She'd attach a link to a local business magazine. The headline made me pause. Tech executive files for bankruptcy after failed venture. There was Michael's face, looking considerably less polished than I remembered. The article detailed the collapse of his software company, mentioning his recent separation from his wife, Jessica, and the impending sale of their house. I closed the article without reading further. His problems weren't my concern anymore. I had more important things to focus on, like the phone call I just received from the FDA about fast-tracking our approval process. That evening, as I left the lab, I noticed a familiar figure waiting by my car. Michael looked different, his expensive suit replaced by wrinkled khakis and a polo shirt, his confident stance now uncertain. "Liz," he said, taking a step forward. "I heard about your research. It's amazing. You're doing exactly what you always said you would." I unlocked my car door, not looking at him. "What do you want, Michael?" He ran a hand through his now graying hair. "I made a mistake. Leaving you, choosing Jessica. It was all a mistake. She left me, did you hear? Said I was too focused on work, too obsessed with trying to prove myself. Ironic, right?" I stared at Michael, standing there in the parking lot looking like a shadow of his former self. For a moment, I felt nothing but a strange sense of detachment, as if I were observing a specimen through my microscope. "Ironic isn't the word I'd use," I said finally. "What exactly are you hoping to accomplish here, Michael?" He stepped closer, his cologne, still the same brand, mingling with the smell of stale coffee. "I've been following your work, Liz. The trials, the results. You're going to change the world. Just like you always said you would." He laughed nervously. "And here I am, bankrupt and divorced. Again. Following my work?" I raised an eyebrow. "You mean following the stock price of my company? The headlines about potential billions in revenue. Is that what brought you here?" His face flushed. "That's not fair. I always believed in you." "No," I cut him off. "You believed in what I could do for you. There's a difference." Just then, my phone buzzed with an urgent message from Dr. Chen. "Emergency meeting. FDA panel. Now." "I have to go," I said, opening my car door. "Liz, please." Michael grabbed my arm. "I know I messed up, but we had something special. Maybe we could." "Dr. Harrison." Amy's voice rang across the parking lot as she ran toward us. "The results from the latest trial just came in. It's even better than we projected. The regression rates are off the charts." I gently removed Michael's hand from my arm. "Goodbye, Michael. Good luck with whatever this was supposed to be." The FDA panel meeting lasted 3 hours. Our data was overwhelming. Tumor regression rates that seemed almost impossible, minimal side effects, results that held steady across diverse patient groups. When the head of the panel announced their decision to fast-track our approval process, the room erupted in applause. "This is historic," Dr. Chen said afterward, his eyes bright with emotion. "Do you realize what you've accomplished?" I did. But I was already thinking about the next phase, scaling up production, ensuring accessibility, making sure this treatment reached the people who needed it most. The next morning, every major news outlet carried the story. "Revolutionary cancer treatment receives FDA fast-track approval." My phone exploded with messages. Colleagues, investors, reporters all wanting to know more about the woman behind the breakthrough. Among them was a text from Jessica, Michael's ex. "I should have known he was wrong about you. Congratulations." I deleted it without responding. The past felt increasingly irrelevant as we moved forward with our work. 6 months later, I stood on stage at a major medical conference, presenting our first real-world results. The audience was packed with the same people who had once dismissed my ideas as too ambitious, too unconventional. The treatment has shown a 94% success rate in patients who failed traditional therapies. I explained, clicking through slides of before and after scans. "We're seeing complete remission in cases that were previously considered terminal." The questions afterward were intense, probing, but I handled them with ease. This was my element now, not dinner parties with Michael's colleagues or playing the role of corporate wife, but here, discussing the science that was saving lives. As I left the stage, a reporter caught up with me. "Dr. Harrison, Forbes estimates your company's value at over $4 billion. How does it feel to be one of the youngest self-made billionaires in biotech?" I thought about Michael, about his obsession with status and wealth. "The money is irrelevant," I replied. What matters is that we're helping people who had lost hope. That's worth more than any billion-dollar valuation. Later that evening, I visited one of our trial sites. Sarah Chen, a 12-year-old patient who had exhausted all other options, was celebrating 6 months of complete remission. Dr. Harrison. She called out when she saw me. Look, my hair is growing back. I watched her show off her new pixie cut, her parents crying quietly in the corner, and felt a profound sense of rightness. This was why I'd spent those long nights in the lab, why I'd chosen science over dinner parties, research over what Michael had called a normal life. The next week, our company went public. The stock price soared, making headlines and creating a frenzy on Wall Street. But I was in the lab, working with our team on improvements to the delivery system. That's where Amy found me late one evening. Dr. Harrison, you need to see this. She handed me a letter. Thick, expensive paper with a law firm's letterhead. Michael was suing for a portion of the company's value, claiming he had supported the early research during our marriage. I read the letter twice, then started laughing. Amy looked concerned until I handed her another document, the ironclad prenup Michael had insisted on signing, convinced he would be the successful one in our marriage. Sometimes, I told her, people are too clever for their own good. The lawsuit was dismissed within weeks. Michael's final attempt to profit from my success had failed spectacularly, making headlines that contrasted sharply with the ones celebrating our treatment's expanding success rates. 1 year after our FDA approval, I stood in our new research facility, a state-of-the-art campus dedicated to pushing the boundaries of cancer treatment even further. The wall of our main lobby displayed photos of patients who had been given a second chance at life. Dr. Chen joined me, looking at the photos. You know, he said quietly, some people spend their whole lives trying to prove others wrong. But you just focus on proving yourself right. I thought about Michael, about his narrow vision of what a wife, a woman, a life should be. I thought about all the nights I'd spent in the lab, not to spite him, but because I believed in something bigger than dinner parties and social status. The best revenge, I replied, isn't about getting even. It's about getting it right. That evening, as I worked late in my office, I received one final email from Michael. I'm sorry, it read. I was wrong about everything. I didn't respond. Instead, I turned back to the research proposal on my screen, a new project that could potentially extend our treatment's effectiveness even further. Success, I had learned, wasn't about proving critics wrong. It was about staying true to your vision, even when others couldn't see it. It was about changing lives, not collecting accolades. And sometimes the most powerful response to those who doubted you isn't words at all. It's the quiet revolution of proving that they never understood your potential in the first place. The invitation to the Morrison family reunion sat on my desk, the gold lettering catching the morning light that streamed through my office window. Across its elegant surface, someone had written in angry red ink, Dioen TSHO will your face at the reunion. The handwriting was my cousin Peter's, current CEO of Morrison Manufacturing, the company my grandfather had built from nothing. The same company I was about to save from bankruptcy, though they didn't know it yet. My phone buzzed with another message from Peter. I mean it, Emily. Stay away. We don't need your kind of negativity at a family celebration. My kind of negativity. That's what they called my warnings 3 years ago, when I tried to tell them their manufacturing methods were becoming obsolete, when I suggested investing in automation and artificial intelligence to stay competitive. You don't understand business, my Uncle James had sneered during that fateful board meeting. You're just a junior analyst trying to play with the big boys. I wasn't just a junior analyst. I was a Stanford MBA graduate who had specialized in manufacturing automation, but they didn't care about my qualifications. All they saw was little Emily, the family disappointment who refused to learn the business from the ground up like everyone else. So I left, not just the company, but the country. I moved to Singapore and started consulting for manufacturing firms across Asia. Within 2 years, I had built Advanced Manufacturing Solutions, AMS, into one of the most respected names in industrial automation. My family didn't know this, of course. They thought I was still doing small-time consulting work, probably struggling to make ends meet. They had no idea that the mysterious AMS their competitors kept raving about was actually run by the cousin they'd dismissed. I picked up the reunion invitation again, remembering the last family gathering I'd attended. It was Christmas 2 years ago. I had just closed a $200 million deal with one of China's largest manufacturers. But at the Morrison dinner table, I was still the failure who had abandoned the family business. At least Peter understands loyalty, my mother had said, pointedly ignoring my untouched wine glass. He's tripled the company's revenue. What she didn't mention was that the revenue increase came from taking on massive debt to maintain outdated operations. I had tracked Morrison Manufacturing's decline through industry reports and insider contacts. They were 3 months away from complete collapse. My assistant knocked on my office door. "Ms. Morrison? The acquisition papers are ready." I nodded, taking a thick folder she handed me. Inside were documents showing that ANS had quietly purchased Morrison Manufacturing's debt from various banks over the past year. We now controlled every aspect of their finances, though they still didn't know who we were. Another text from Peter flashed on my phone. "Don't even think about causing trouble. The family is finally doing well without your interference." I opened my laptop and pulled up Morrison Manufacturing's latest financial report. Their stock had dropped 70% in the past month. 3 major clients had canceled contracts due to quality control issues. The automation systems I had proposed 3 years ago would have prevented those problems. My phone rang, my Uncle James's number. I let it go to voicemail. "Emily," his voice was strained, trying to maintain its usual arrogance. "The board is meeting next week to discuss some strategic changes. Your father suggested we might benefit from your expertise. Call me back." I smiled. So they had finally realized they needed help, but they still didn't know how much trouble they were really in. The next text came from my cousin Sarah. "How dare you ignore Uncle James's call, after everything the family has done for you?" Everything they had done for me? Like blocking my promotion 3 years ago. Like mocking my suggestions in front of the entire board. Like banning me from the family reunion because I dared to suggest their precious company needed modernization. I opened my safe and pulled out another document, the original contract from when my grandfather founded the company. There, in clear legal language, was the clause that would save or destroy Morrison Manufacturing. Any sale, merger, or major restructuring of the company requires unanimous approval from all living direct descendants of James Morrison Sr. That included me. My grandfather had added that clause to protect the company from hostile takeovers. He never imagined it would one day give his unsuccessful granddaughter the power to decide the company's fate. I pressed my intercom. "Janet, please send in the lawyers." 3 men in expensive suits entered my office. They had been working on this case for months, preparing for this exact moment. "Gentlemen," I gestured to the chairs in front of my desk. "It's time to discuss the Morrison Manufacturing takeover." "Are you sure about this, Ms. Morrison?" the lead lawyer asked. "Once we move forward, there's no going back. Your family?" "My family made their choice when they banned me from the reunion." I cut him off. "Now it's my turn to make a choice." I glanced at my phone, another missed call from Uncle James, 2 texts from Peter, and an email from my father marked URGENT, Family Business Matter. Too little too late. I picked up my pen, ready to sign the documents that would seal Morrison Manufacturing's fate. In 3 months, when they discovered their only hope of survival required my signature, they would learn exactly who they had dismissed. The question was, would I sign to save them, or would I send back an empty envelope? 3 months after receiving that defaced reunion invitation, I sat in my Singapore office, watching Morrison Manufacturing's world crumble in real time. Their stock had just been suspended from trading after falling 90%. Their biggest lender had called in their loans. 3 board members had resigned, and my phone wouldn't stop ringing. "Ms. Morrison," my assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Your Uncle James has called 17 times in the past hour. Should I keep blocking him?" "Yes," I replied, turning to the wall of screens displaying news headlines. "Morrison Manufacturing faces bankruptcy. Historic family company on brink of collapse. Advanced Manufacturing Solutions set to acquire Morrison assets." My cousin Peter's name flashed on my phone again. This time I answered. "Emily," he sounded breathless, panicked. "Where have you been? We've been trying to reach you for days." I thought I wasn't supposed to show my face. I replied calmly. "Isn't that what you wrote on my reunion invitation?" That was different. "We need you now. The company, there's this firm, AMS, they've bought all our debt. They're going to take everything unless all family members sign off on a restructuring deal." I smiled, spinning in my chair to look out over the Singapore skyline. Really? Tell me more about this AMS. There's some Asian manufacturing consultancy. Nobody really knows who runs it. Emily, please. We need your signature or everything grandfather built is gone. Interesting, I mused. And what makes you think I would help after how you've treated me? We're family, he said desperately. Despite everything, we're blood. Blood? I laughed coldly. Was I blood when you blocked my promotion? When you mocked my suggestions about automation? When you banned me from family gatherings? Silence. The board meets in an hour, he finally said. Uncle James wants you to video call in. Oh, I'll be there in person, I replied. I'm already in the building. What? But you're in Singapore. Am I? I hung up and stood, smoothing my designer suit. Through my office window, I could see the Morrison manufacturing headquarters across the street. I had rented this office specifically for this moment. Janet, I called to my assistant. Is everything ready? She nodded, handing me a leather portfolio. The takeover documents are prepared, and the surveillance feed from the Morrison boardroom is live. I pulled up the feed on my tablet. The boardroom was filling up. My Uncle James sat at the head of the table, his face ashen. Peter paced nervously while my father stared blankly at his phone, probably trying to call me again. At exactly 2 p.m., I walked into their boardroom. The silence was immediate and absolute. Emily? My father stood up. What are you doing here? Saving the company, I replied simply, or destroying it. I haven't decided yet. What are you talking about? Uncle James demanded, but his voice lacked its usual authority. I opened my portfolio and began laying out documents. 3 years ago, I told you our manufacturing processes needed modernization. You laughed at me, so I left and built the most advanced manufacturing consultancy in Asia. What does that have to do with? Peter began, but his voice trailed off as understanding dawned. No. Yes, I smiled. Advanced Manufacturing Solutions. And it's my company. The room erupted in chaos. Uncle James jumped up, knocking over his chair. My father's face went pale. Peter looked like he might faint. That's impossible, James sputtered. ANS is worth billions. 4 billion at last valuation, I confirmed. Amazing what can happen when you actually understand modern manufacturing. I laid out the final document, the takeover agreement. You have 2 options. Option 1. I sign this. ANS acquires Morrison Manufacturing, and we modernize operations. You all keep your jobs, though with significantly reduced authority. And option 2? My father asked quietly. I send back an empty envelope. The banks call in their loans. Morrison Manufacturing declares bankruptcy, and I buy the assets at auction anyway. You wouldn't? Peter whispered. This company is your heritage too. My heritage? I laughed. The same heritage you used to exclude me? To mock me? To ban me from family events? I pulled out the defaced reunion invitation and placed it on the table. Actions have consequences. You made it clear I wasn't family. So now I'm just a businesswoman making a business decision. Uncle James slumped in his chair. What do you want? Full control, I said. I'll keep the Morrison name, but ANS will manage everything. You all become employees, nothing more. And if we refuse? I pulled up the company's financials on the boardroom screen. You have enough cash for maybe 2 more weeks of operations. After that, bankruptcy, your choice. The room fell silent except for the quiet hum of the air conditioning. These men who had once seemed so powerful, so untouchable, now looked small and defeated. One more thing, I added, pulling out another envelope. Inside is an invitation to ANS's annual gala next month. I've seated you all at the back, near the kitchen. I believe that's where you put family members you don't respect. Peter flinched. My father looked away. The papers need to be signed today, I continued. I have other meetings to attend. One by one, they signed. With each signature, decades of arrogance and patriarchal control crumbled. Finally, only my signature remained. I held the pen, thinking about all the years of dismissal and disrespect. Emily, my father said softly. Please. I signed. Congratulations, I stood up. You're now all employees of AMS. Human Resources will be in touch about your new positions. I suggest updating your resumes. As I walked to the door, Uncle James called out. Was it worth it? Destroying your own family for revenge? I turned back. This isn't revenge, it's business. You taught me that family doesn't matter, remember? I'm just following your example. I left them there, surrounded by the ruins of their empire. My assistant was waiting outside. Should I send that empty envelope you prepared? She asked. No, I replied. This is better. Now they have to work for the cousin they banned from their reunion. The next day, Morrison Manufacturing announced its acquisition by ANS. The stock jumped 200% on the news. Analysts praised the deal as a perfect marriage of traditional manufacturing and modern technology. Only my family knew the truth, that their savior and their destroyer were one and the same. 1 month later, they all attended the ANS gala, seated at their assigned table by the kitchen doors. They watched as I gave the keynote speech announcing the successful integration of Morrison Manufacturing into the ANS family of companies. Sometimes, I said, looking directly at their table, the people you dismiss today become the people you answer to tomorrow. The audience applauded. My family sat in silence. After the gala, I found the defaced reunion invitation in my hotel room. Someone had crossed out the angry red "Dilming to SHO your face" and written instead, "We were wrong." Too little, too late. I pinned it to my office wall as a reminder. Success is the best revenge, but control is even better. Now every morning they walk into a building with my name on it, working for the cousin they once banned. Sometimes the empty envelope isn't the strongest message. Sometimes making them work for you is the ultimate power move.